Hi, my name is Professor Jennifer Nazarino, and I teach a course called Global Dynamics and Immigrant Entrepreneurship in the United States. My class has created podcasts on immigrant entrepreneurs, and you'll be listening to the challenges, successes, as well as structural conditions and contextual factors that have led immigrants to start their businesses both in Rhode Island and around the country. Immigrants own over a quarter of newly owned established businesses, despite accounting for less than 15% of the total population here in the United States. Moreover, 45% of immigrant businesses are owned and operated by women. The students provide a deep dive and intimate look into the lives of immigrant entrepreneurs. Hope you enjoy it.
Hey guys, my name is Stephanie and welcome to the Immigrant Entrepreneurship Story Series. Today I interviewed Jessica Kim, a Brown alum and our current entrepreneur in residence at the Nelson Center. She has founded 3 ventures since college and she is currently the CEO of Ianacare, a virtual care team for caregivers of people enduring prolonged illnesses. Her background as a second-generation Korean-American immigrant and her continuous passion for entrepreneurship provide a very unique story for us today. Could you give a little overview of your entrepreneurial journey, like how you got where you are?
Yeah, sure. So I did not intend to be an entrepreneur. I actually didn't even know really what it was, but I loved studying people. And then it was really kind of one of those situations where I walked into a pizzeria and I saw a plate of banana bread being sold and I baked for fun. I would bake all my friends' birthday cakes and everything. And I just challenged the owner and I said, I could do so much better than that. And, you know, he said, bring it in. It sold out. I made signs for it. I called it Jessica's Wonders. And the slogan was, so good, it'll make you wonder. And I just then expanded from there to 13 different locations. And then I really didn't quite know exactly what it would turn into or that what I was doing was really a business. But I really enjoyed doing it. And then it was going to Professor Hazeltine who said, oh, this is a thing, and why don't you enter the first business plan competition we're having at Brown. And so to get credit, I did that, and I fell in love with the process of thinking about all the different components of business. And then we actually won the competition, which is so shocking. But this is the thing actually that I realized. I was like, why did a old school baked goods company win the competition? This was in 1998. Right. It was getting right where it's all becoming more tech oriented. And a judge said it's because you are actually doing it. You actually have a business. You are executing. A lot of these other plans are just ideas. But the true entrepreneurs are the ones who are actually going to do it. Like they're going to take that next step, sell, create, you know. And so that doing is the key part. So yeah, that's how I got into we won the competition. I got $3,000, but then I got mentorship, and then we ended up raising $1 million my senior year. So that was kind of my start to being an entrepreneur.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
That's like one thing to think about it, but another to do it. So what gave you the courage to like jump into something you like completely did not know? This is so cool.
I think it's like don't overthink. You just take that very first step, and it's literally like one step in front of the other is how you build these businesses. Right. And the more you learn, you apply, and then you learn more and you apply, and you don't have to be an expert before you start.
So transitioning a little bit into more of like your entrepreneurial philosophy, so I did read an article online that explained how you were like giving back to the food bank and like employing people. So and that's like not common in what we normally think of as like entrepreneurship or like business making. So what made you want to go just like beyond the whole business model?
So when I started having this baking business, which I almost like kind of like fell into and worked hard, but like I didn't intend to. But once I realized, oh, this is a thing, I realized, and we were starting to make money. I was like, it can't be just about this. I don't know. I just felt like it can't be just about making baked goods. And at first, my concern was like, this isn't even really healthy for you. And so as a young person, I had this conflict of like, as a business, we want to sell. But I was also trying to, I was teaching aerobics, so I was also a healthy person, and I felt like so conflicted. And so I was kind of thinking about a deeper reason. with my next business, I realized, the social component or doing good and whatever we do has to be more integrated. And so, one, I said the product itself, I want it to do good and have a purpose. And so, with Babaco, which is the parenting company that I started in 2008, the product itself was all about kind of fostering quality time that you spend with your kids. And so, you can buy a lot of things for your kids, but the most important thing you can give to your kids is your time, attention, and love. And that's kind of the basis of why we created certain products. And so, so that's, I was just like, I'm going to work the mission within the product. And then with Ianacare, the one I'm starting now, I just feel like is truly in all senses now have learned how to incorporate kind of this social good, but truly authentically in our operations. How do we do it in a sustainable way? And so the way we did that was we were very, very big on our mission and our honesty of how long it could even take and what we're willing to risk or not risk. And we even say, like, our whole thing is to actually provide the best solution for the caregivers, even if it is at risk of profit in certain areas. Now, we all, of course, have to be profitable. And we want to build a big business, too. Like, you don't discredit that. But you are clear with your priorities as the founders. And so I think really thinking about it and choosing your right partners in all senses can make it possible.
Do you remember at what point, like, you considered yourself, like, not just like a business owner, but like as an entrepreneur?
I think it was near the end of the Jessica's Wonders experience when people started calling me that, whether it was in newspaper articles. And then when I went to business school, people would say, so what have you done? And I never said I'm an entrepreneur. I would just say, oh, I did this and that. And I realized I need a shorter answer. And then people were like, oh, you're an entrepreneur, you know? And that was before saying I'm in a startup or an entrepreneur was a thing. But I remember that was like the first time where I was like, oh, I guess so. But I also realized that creating solutions and starting ventures is my best form of expression of love and of what I think the world could be like. If I were an artist, I'd be painting this stuff. That's what it feels like. I feel like this is my expression of what I want to say to the world or how I want to gather people around this to make something different happen. And so I consider myself more like that versus like start a business.
Right. So would you say that's like what ultimately drives you?
So my fundamental belief is that no matter where you come from or who you are or what your background is, as a human, all we really want in life is to feel love. And that's a very human, universal thing. And so I think our challenge and opportunity is to find our unique way of loving others. And the way for me to love other people is to create solutions deeply embedded by my love for them and then for it to like make it better. So I think I'm trying to encourage like all of us as business people or anything we do, after interacting with me or after interacting with my product, does that help you flourish? That even if I take my product away, you're in a better place. And that's like a point of guidance that I give to myself and to our team and all that stuff. So I think that's my driver.
So if you feel comfortable to like tell me a little bit more about your family's like story, how they came to the US, like
So my dad grew up in poverty. Like I remember in 6th grade going to Korea and I saw the hut that he lived in. That contrasts to my mom, who was the daughter of basically the equivalent of the FBI for the president. She was the oldest of 8. She had 2 maids. She was very well off, right? And so she was a beauty queen. And then my dad, as a country bumpkin, like saw it and he was like, I want her. He's like, what? But this speaks to my dad's determination. So he literally sought out her parents. Just said, can I date your daughter? And he said, this is my vision for my life. This is all that stuff. And basically the parents saw some fire in him. And then said, yes, you can date my daughter. And so that's how determined he was. And then he got enough money from his sisters. They all pulled money together to send him to medical school because that was the only way out. Yeah. So he went to medical school and then he went to do his residency at Harvard, which I'm like, how did you even get there? But he like just really bootstrapped himself and worked his way. And then that's what brought him to the US. Yeah, so that's where the immigrant hustle comes from.
Right.
Because like, I think even though I didn't live that my dad did, I mean, it's my dad, right? And so I have more and more appreciation as I grow older, now having my own family. And the interesting thing though is I can understand Korean fluently, but my speaking is really bad. And when I ask that, because I wish so much, and I was a linguistic anthropology major, but like I wish so much I was able to speak it. So I always feel like, why didn't you force me to talk back? Because like during that time, if I just responded in Korean, I could have learned it, because I understand it, but it's like a different part of the brain.
Right.
And I remember my mom saying, you know, we knew we were going to settle here, and I just didn't want you to feel different. I wanted you to succeed here. And from that heart, I totally get it. Because growing up, I never felt like I was different, even though I lived in a predominantly Caucasian school, things like that. Like I remember, and my dad being a psychiatrist and just being super determined in the way his character was, he always told me, it doesn't matter if you're a girl, it doesn't matter if you're Asian, it doesn't matter if you're, you know, dark skin, light skin, tall, short, like you be who you are, and you are who you are. And like, so I understand, like, you know, so I just felt like I appreciate my culture, and I'm not shy of sharing it, but it doesn't make me feel insecure or different. In fact, I'm like, hey, I can add something different to this conversation. But I think the background of it was really a lot driven by my dad. My mom was always supportive. She would do anything. Oh my gosh. But my dad had that fire in him that if you hear his history of where he came from, I mean, you had to believe and like break the mold. And so I think he just like always instilled that in me from very early on. And still, even though I know that the percentage of Asian females and even, you know, VC as we were talking or any of this, I'm still very often like a minority in these things. But I don't know, I'm just kind of like, sometimes it's intimidating, but then I always think in my head, my dad was always like, if you're different, that's actually good, you're memorable. And so like own it and be it, and don't be shy.
So yeah, I think like one of the main questions now is like tying back like entrepreneurship and your immigrant identity. Do you feel like your identity like has shaped how you approach entrepreneurship in any way?
Yeah, for sure. If I really think about it, it's a huge part of how we view the world and also kind of build. I think immigrants have to build. Like every immigrant that came over, they're builders. We didn't come and have generations of money and wealth handed down to us, right? So every single person coming is like, they have to build from scratch. And so if you think about that, they have to have even a vision for their family, where they're going to live, their philosophy, how they're going to mix, and what are they going to keep and what are they not going to keep, and where they're going to emphasize or not. All those things, I feel like is exact parallel to like starting or being an entrepreneur. It's like a vision of this world, but what are you going to honor that's already in the world, and what are you going to try to change? And yeah, and it's totally building. It's building. Talk about step by step. That's exactly, you know, how immigrants kind of came and built their future to survive. Right,
yeah.
And I think there's a grittiness. You know, everyone says as an entrepreneur you want to be scrappy, but like as immigrants, we grew up with scrappy, right? And you're okay with that. Like it's not like you're like taking a huge step down and you're suffering. You're actually grateful. And I think that makes a huge difference when you're an entrepreneur, because there's a lot of scrappiness and like, you know, you're not going to get to that perfect state in a long time, but you have that gratitude throughout the quote unquote tough periods. And you take the long-term vision. You
did talk about how whenever you're like a minority, you like turn that on its head. But has there been moments where you were like, oh my gosh, like, should I give up? Like, should I just back out?
Yeah, I mean, all the time, for so many reasons. I think I felt it and I feel it most when you do walk into kind of a room, not like a room if there's a purpose for meeting. Then I feel like, okay, I'm going to own this purpose. But when it's just a room where it's, whether it's like a networking happy hour or a new community type of thing, where, and then you realize that's sometimes you don't have those built-in connections all the time, right? Or you have to build it from scratch, right? Because you could say either like they've known each other, or like they do all these other 3 things together, or like, oh, our kids all go to the same private school together, and like, so they have all these bases of connections, and here I am coming in not having those network base, you know, and then so that can feel daunting and be like, oh wow, and then you tie that to the reality of that impacts kind of also even your accessibility to funding or hiring or things like that, right? It's kind of like we say network isn't so important, but along with like coming here with a set amount of wealth, there's also a set amount of networks that go deep in history. And so when you don't have that, you have to build all of that from scratch. And so sometimes it feels like, oh my gosh, you know, it took me a long time to build that.
Thank you so much, Jessica, for sharing your amazing story with us. This episode was brought to you by Professor Jennifer Nazareno's class with the help of Brown's Multimedia Lab. So if you like this podcast, please stay tuned for more interviews with immigrant entrepreneurs coming your way. Thank you, guys.